Hmm. Well, that was an interesting Brickyard 400 to say the least. I mean, I'm not going to call it the best race ever. In fact, I still think it's a below average race, but for what it's worth, it wasn't complete and total trash this time, which is kind of a surprise. Let's get into it. This is the fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the Packer Man, and welcome to today's edition of the Fuel. Where today we are going to be reviewing the Brickyard 400, or as it's known as with the sponsor, the Big Machine Hand Sanitizer 400 at the Brickyard, which is fucking stupid, but you know, it is what it is. But I'm not gonna lie, my first impressions of the race, it was kind of okayish in spots. I mean, there were still times when it was completely boring as hell, and there's a stat line that it matched with the Pocono race, the Sunday edition Pocono race last week, but it wasn't as terrible as I thought it was going to be, especially considering what we had seen the last couple of years. Now, I'm not going to call this race the best of all time. That's fuck no on that one. But for what it's worth, it was an race. One good, one terrible. It was kind of in the middle-ish. I won't call it average or above average, because that'd be giving it too much credit. But that is a bit of an improvement considering, you know, just how trash the Brickyard 400 has been the last couple of years. I mean, it's been borderline unwatchable. I mean, look what happened last year. That race was total fucking garbage, and was probably, I think, the worst race of the year as far as me rating it. I think I only gave it half a point last year. But this year it's going to get a much better score, I will say. So, you know, at least there's that. And by the way, if I seem a little bit tired, I am still a bit under the weather. And plus, I'm still working 10-hour days at work in a hot-ass warehouse. So forgive me if I seem a little lethargic, because it's just how I've been feeling the last couple of days. But we're going to go ahead and get started with this episode of The Fuel. So before we get into the review itself, though, let's take a look at the news of the week. Alright, so news topics. The big one that came out of this week, and there's quite a few big topics to talk about, but obviously the big one that came out of this week was the fact that Jimmie Johnson is the first driver to test positive for COVID-19. Now, what had happened was his wife tested positive for it, and since he had been in close proximity with her, decided to get a test done as well, and it was a positive test as well. He said he hasn't exhibited any symptoms though, so it's probably just a mild case that he has, and hopefully he'll be able to return to the cockpit as soon as possible. Of course, he'll probably have to go into like a 2-week quarantine, which has usually been the standard. However, he'll be able to return to the cockpit once he has 2 negative tests, I think in a 24-hour span, if I saw correctly. But this has not been the retirement tour that I think Jimmie Johnson has been expecting here in 2020. I mean, with this whole COVID-19 shit kind of shaking things up, and now he actually tests positive for the damn disease. And he says that he will retire. He will stick to his retirement at the end of this year. You know, but you know, there have been a lot of people saying, "Oh, maybe he should reconsider because of what's been going on this year." I mean, to be honest, I don't know if I would want this to be like the lasting legacy of my final year. in NASCAR. But that's just me personally. But from what I've heard, it's only been he hasn't exhibited any symptoms, which tells me it's a mild case, which is good. So hopefully he'll be able to fight it off, and he'll be back in the cockpit before too long. And NASCAR did say that he would get a medical exemption, because they have a rule in place where you have to start every race in order to in order to qualify for the championship, to be eligible for the championship, I should say. But there are exemptions that can happen for, extenuating circumstances, like Ryan Newman, what happened at Daytona. He got a medical exemption. Matt Kenseth, he got a special exemption because of the circumstances that happened surrounding the 42 car earlier this year. And obviously Jimmie Johnson, he's going to get a medical exemption as well. So certainly wish Jimmie Johnson the best. I'll be the first one to admit I've never been a fan of his, but this is not what you want to see as a race fan. You don't want to see a driver, especially one of the caliber of Jimmie Johnson, be stricken with something like this and have to miss several races. And these are the first races he has ever had to miss. I mean, he has been, from his time in the series in 2002, his rookie year, all the way to now, he had never missed a race. So that kind of sucks. But hopefully he'll be able to recover from this and be back behind the cockpit before too long. Speaking of COVID-19, getting a report, there have been some people reporting that the Watkins Glen race may be in danger of not being run because of New York kind of being in the middle of a COVID-19 spike at the moment. I think they said that that COVID-19 cases has been spiking as of late. And wow, Kevin Harvick has an average finish of 6.9. I just saw that. That sucks. Sorry, I'm on Twitter at the moment. I just saw a couple things that kind of suck. Like Charlie Daniels apparently passed today. That sucks. No, he was 83 years of age, so that's good. Here we go. So, NASCAR industry execs, and this is from Adam Stern, by the way. NASCAR industry execs are increasingly skeptical that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, will grant the sport a quarantine waiver for the August Watkins Glen weekend, which would put that race in serious doubt. If the WGI weekend was canceled, NASCAR could move the Cup race to a Roval in the southeast. Now, where that would be, I have absolutely no idea. But that would suck if Watkins Glen got canceled. But I think NASCAR, based on this, is committed to getting at least 2 road course races this year, since Sonoma was canceled earlier this year. But if Watkins Glen is canceled, then they would move, from what I've heard, they would move it to they would have basically a Roval race in the southeast. I don't know if it would be at the Charlotte Roval or not, but that would be kind of interesting, to say the least. Man, I'm tired. But into some positive news, though. It has been reported, and apparently confirmed, that NASCAR is going to be using the cone rule, or the choose rule, for the All-Star race at Bristol, which is coming up in about a week and a half. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, what the hell is the choose rule? Well, the choose rule, or the cone rule, is a short track rule, basically on local short tracks. I remember when Columbus Motor Speedway used to use it for their Crazy Compact division. Basically, an official would set a cone on the backstretch, I think is the backstretch, and when the lead, or no, it was actually, I think in turn 2, actually. Turn 1 or turn 2, at least as far as I remember, where the leaders would then come up to the cone, and they would choose to either go to the inside or the outside. Now, obviously, if several cars, like say, go to the same lane, then, you know, like say the outside, which at Bristol would be the preferred lane, then a driver could conceivably choose the inside lane and actually gain several positions, but would also be at a bit of a disadvantage since the low line would not be the preferred lane. So that's something that they're going to try for the All-Star race, which I think is fine. You know, it's a special event, you know, and it's also kind of like the perfect avenue, you know, to test drive certain things. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm all for it. I mean, I used to see the cone roll all the time when I used to go to Columbus Motor Speedway before it closed down. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that works out. And then we had the IndyCar series. This of course was the weekend for the first ever IndyCar NASCAR doubleheader, or triple header as it were, since the Xfinity series raced on the road course of Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the first time, which received glowing reviews considering how good that race was. It was almost like we were suggesting that for a long time, and oh, look at that, it turned out to be a damn good race. How about that? What was not a good race was the GMR Grand Prix, which was the second race of the IndyCar Series season, where Scott Dixon basically whipped everybody's ass. I mean, the margin of victory was 20 seconds. Not exactly what I would call an exciting race, and that's the second race in a row that Dixon has basically dominated and won by a wide margin. Of course, he whipped everybody's ass at Texas too. And IndyCar is going to be pretty busy here in the month of July because they got, I think, 2 doubleheader weekends this month. They got Road America this Saturday and Sunday, and then next week they have a pair of 250-mile races at the Iowa Speedway. So they're going to be pretty damn busy here in the month of July. But here are the race results for the GMR Grand Prix. As soon as I pull them up, because this computer likes to give me a hard time sometimes. Come on, hurry up. I want to get this over with, damn it. Alright, so top 10 finishers. Of course, Scott Dixon. That 26 total laps of the 80 laps in total. Won by 20 seconds, basically. Graham Rahal came home in the second position, and then Simon Pagenaud rounded out the podium. Then you had Colton Herta. Rinus VeeKay started, where did he start? Doesn't say. Started 18th, I think it says, and ended up in 5th, so good run for him. Marcus Ericsson. Then we have Joseph Newgarden, Pato O'Ward, Santino Ferrucci, and Takuma Sato rounding out the top 10. And then your top 6 in the point standings. Scott Dixon, of course, is the points leader, which, you know, is to be expected considering he won the first 2 races of the year, and has a 29-point edge over Simon Pagenaud. Joseph Newgarden, your defending champion, is 3rd, and you have Colton Herta, Graham Rahal, and Zach Veach rounding out your top 6. And I believe that is it for the news of the week. There were some juicy things that came out today, but I'm going to save that for next week's episode, so since it took place on a Monday. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the race review itself. Let's do it. Alright, so your race review for the 2020 Big Machine Hand Sanitizer Brickyard 400. So, stages broke down like this. Stage was 1 and 2, 50 laps, and stage 3, 60 laps. And there was a bit of a lightning delay at the beginning of this race. Go fucking figure, right? That's the 5th straight race that we've had some kind of weather delay. Getting kind of ridiculous. So halfway point was 80 laps, which, you know, we blew that out of the water. But here we go. Stage 1, 50 laps, of course. Joe Logano drew the pole position. Hamlin got by Kurt Busch for 2nd. Harvick decides to pit before the competition caution for 4 tires, which was a bit of an interesting strategy, which would actually work out in the end. Caution number 1 came out on lap 13 for the competition caution, of course. Everyone comes in for service, and then a scary incident happened at the entrance of pit road, where there was a huge wreck. Several cars sustained major damage, spin sideways. Those cars were Justin Allgaier, who was substituting for Jimmy Johnson in the 48 car, Truex, who had ECU problems and then runs into the back of someone, Corey LaJoie, Ryan Preece, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Brennan Poole. All cars would continue on after getting damage repairs, but all would fail to meet the minimum speed and would retire from the race afterwards. But the scariest incident out of all of this was one of Ryan Blaney's crew members, Zach Price, was pinched between Blaney's car and what looked like Brennan Poole's car. I couldn't really tell. He basically, it looked like his leg got pinched. They haven't really released any updates, other than the fact that he was smiling as he was taken to the ambulance. So he might have a broken leg. Hopefully, it's not that serious. But after he basically got pinched, he tried to crawl out of there. It actually knocked his helmet off, which was kind of scary. But I guess a lot of us really take for granted, you know, what kind of a dangerous job these crew members have, you know. But thankfully, they have a lot of the, they have a lot of safety measures put in place, like they wear their helmets and stuff, just in case something like this happens. But hopefully, if he does have a broken leg, he'll be able to make a full recovery, because that was a scary incident, to say the least. So red flag was issued for the incident to clean it up, since it was on, you know, the pit lane, which is basically the narrowest pit lane in the Cup Series. Race goes back under yellow after a 15-minute red flag. Kurt Busch has to go to the end of the field after problems on his pit stop. Basically, you know, he's having all kinds of tire issues and stuff like that. Harvick leads on the restart. Bowman gets put in the middle right at the restart. Logano stays side by side with Harvick for several laps, but Harvick prevails with a push from Almirola, his teammate. Hamlin gets by Elliott for the 5th position, and then Almirola has to make an unscheduled stop for a bad vibration, but with fresher tires was able to get back around Harvick to get back on the lead lap. So that was a good job by him. That's a good thing he did, because the second caution came out on lap number 41 when Ryan Newman smacks the wall hard in turn 3 after a right front tire failure. And this will not be the last one of the day, and I'm going to put it to you this way. I'm not going to talk about it in great length in this edition of The Fuel, but I will be talking about the press release that Goodyear put out, and on next week's edition of The Fuel, I will be ripping them a new asshole. I'll put it to you that way. But most of the field comes in for service. Ty Dillon wins the race off with a 2-tire stop, but William Byron stays out and leads on the restarts. And this was actually one of the best parts of the race. We saw some crazy ass racing for position in the top 10. You had a battle for the 3rd position between Austin Dillon, Kevin Harvick, Chase Elliott. You know, they were just going back and forth, you know, trying to do like slingshot maneuvers, you know, and all that good stuff. And this was actually a pretty entertaining end to stage 1. I was like, damn, this was actually some pretty good racing. Something that we haven't really had a chance to see at Indianapolis all that much for the Cup cars. But William Byron wins stage number 1. And the drivers who didn't pit under the second caution pit under this stage break. So, stage 2, 50 laps as well. They show Suarez have some kind of weird issue. I don't know if he like spun out on the backstretch, but that was weird. But Elliott leads the start of stage 2. Matty D and Hamlin get by Harvick for 2nd and 3rd respectively, when the two basically draft by him. Then we have a Truly train beginning to form behind Matty D for the 4th position, with Kyle Busch and Matt Kenseth joining the end of that train. Matt Kenseth with a great run in this race, by the way. He gets by Kyle Busch for 5th here, and then Hamlin finally gets by Matty D for 2nd in amongst the lap traffic. That was actually for 2nd, okay. But then the caution comes down on lap 73, or 75, excuse me, when Eric Jones goes hard into the turn 3 wall after losing the right front tire. So that's 2 different teams that have had right front tire failures. One's a Ford, one's a Toyota, one's for Roush Fenway, one's for Joe Gibbs. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Sorry, freaking leg is bleeding after I peeled off a scab. Looks like it's stopped now, though. Alright. So everyone comes in for service. Byron takes just 2 tires and wins the race off pit road, but that would actually prove to be a mistake because he leads on the restart, but then he brings out the 4th caution right afterwards on lap 83 when he blows a left front tire, this time down the backstretch. Thankfully it was on the backstretch and not going into the turn, because that would have been bad. But I mean, it basically tore his car all to pieces when the tire exploded. The left side of the hood of the car was basically gone, and the tire, what remained of the tire, was basically wrapped around the hub. So they had to take like a sawzall and try to cut through the rubber to try to get that tire out of there. And then of course they had to also get the car repaired at make minimum speed, and they ended up losing 2 laps in the process, and that was pretty much it for them as far as trying to win this race. So Austin Dillon leads on the restart, but then Harvick goes 3 wide with Hamlin and Dillon to take the lead into turn 3. Hamlin had tried to duck under Dillon for the lead down the backstretch, but then Harvick went 3 wide and basically slingshotted around both of them. But then the 5th caution of the day comes down on lap 89 when Ryan Blaney hits the turn 3 wall after spinning and entering the corner. He got loose under his teammate Brad Keselowski and spun out in turn 3. You know, not much you can do about that one. Harvick leads on the restart. Elliott gets up to 2nd on the restart, and Harvick wins stage number 2. So most of the field comes in for service, and then we have Harvick leading the start of stage 3. Hamlin does the same 3 wide move on Elliott and Harvick and almost pulls it off into turn 3, but Harvick with a power move around the outside keeps the lead. Hamlin starts hounding Harvick for the race lead as the 2 of them run away from the field. Hamlin is the first to pit road on lap 123. Harvick pits the next time around, and Harvick also had a little bit of trouble on his pit stop. Was a little bit slow on one of the tire changes, which allowed Hamlin to leapfrog Harvick in the standings. At this point, it was looking like GG Hamlin. Kenseth and a couple others were staying out, and we're going to pit later in the run. But then the 6th caution came on lap 133 when Alex Bowman becomes the next victim of a right front tire failure, this time in turn number 1. And one thing about these tire failures is that when these tires went, these guys were going into the wall hard. I mean, at a severe angle. So thank God for these safer barriers and, you know, all the safety innovations that NASCAR's come up with for these cars, because I mean 20 years ago that could have resulted in an injury or worse at the speeds that these guys are running. So, you know, all those safety innovations are great to see. Those who did not pit under the green come in under this yellow. Kenseth actually comes out with 4 tires, and he's in the 3rd position. So he has the freshest tires out of everybody. But as we've seen, tires don't really mean a whole lot. Fresh air is. And Hamlin proves that on the restart with 22 laps to go. Harvick actually gets a pretty piss-poor restart, loses a few spots, but then gains them right back on the backstretch, which proves how strong of a car that he had. Harvick has a run on Hamlin and goes high into turn 3, on the outside of him into turn 3, but runs high and has to back off. Cole Custer is up to 4th at this point, and Almirola is back up to 5th. So the Stewart-Haas cars running strong in this race. I mean, for the most part, you know, Stewart Haas Racing has basically been a one-man band with Kevin Harvick, but Eric Almirola, that 10 team has come alive in the last 5 races. I mean, when you count this race, he's had 5 consecutive top 5 finishes. Are you kidding me? That's pretty damn impressive. So I don't know what's lit a fire under that 10 team, but they've come to play here in the last couple weeks. Kenseth just a second back in the 3rd position, so we actually had 3 cars under a blanket for this race win. And at this point I'm thinking, wow, are we actually going to see a pretty decent finish here? That's what I was hoping. Almirola gets by his teammate Custer for 5th position, and it's looking like Denny Hamlin is on his way to his first Brickyard 400 victory. But then fate decided to intervene in a very cruel way with our 7th and final caution on lap 154, when Denny Hamlin loses a right front tire from the lead of the race and pounds the turn 1 wall and ends his day, handing the lead over to Kevin Harvick. And at this point I was like, holy shit, these Goodyear tires are fucking trash. They really are. I mean, when you have this many right front tire failures from I mean, if it was just one team, like Joe Gibbs Racing, for instance, having all these tire failures, then, you know, I would say, okay, you know, maybe it's just for that one team. But we've had tire failures for Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, and Roush Fenway. 3 completely different teams. 3 completely different manufacturers. I mean, what else do you want me to say? The tires suck. You know? But like I said, I'm going to delve more into that next week in the news of the week. But we head into overtime. Harvick leads the overtime restart, and of course he had the advantage of it didn't matter if he started on the inside or the outside, he would have had SHR teammates behind him regardless. And he went with Custer, I think, in this case, and Custer basically pushed him to the lead. And that was basically all she wrote, as Harvick easily holds Kenseth at bay to win the Brickyard 400 for the 2nd straight year, and it is his 3rd Brickyard 400 victory. And then on the last lap, Matt DiBenedetto tried to get underneath of Austin Dillon in turn 3. Dillon didn't really give him a whole lot of room, and the 2 made contact and basically crashed on the last lap of the race. So in this race we had 11 overall lead changes, but for the 2nd straight week and for the 2nd straight year in this race, we had 0 pure lead changes. You just can't pass the leader. I mean, the way this package is, I mean, you just cannot get a run on the leader and pass him. It's damn near impossible. And to me, that is just unacceptable. But, you know, for what it's worth, this race was not completely terrible. It had its great moments, but of course you had the tire schmozzle, you know, with Goodyear, and there were still some parts of this race that were boring as hell, which is to be expected. But by and large, this was not a completely garbage race. I mean, I wouldn't call this a good race either, but it was still an okay-ish race, in my opinion. Well, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the race results and point standings and give you my final rating for this race. Alright, so top 10 finishers for the Big Machine Hand Sanitizer 400. Try to say that 5 times fast. How about this top 10? Of course, Kevin Harvick with the win, led 68 laps. But Matt Kenseth retired at the end of 2018, I believe. And it was either 2017 or 2018. I can't really remember. My brain's kind of foggy with how freaking tired I am. But comes back in weird circumstances in the 42 car and brings home a 2nd second place finish in the Brickyard 400. To me, that's pretty impressive. And how about Eric Almirola? His 5th top 5 finish in a row. It had to overcome a problem in the first stage in order to get that top 5. Brad Keselowski didn't really talk about him pretty much all day until he made it up to 4th at the end. And then how about Cole Custer? Started in the 30th position and gets, I think, his first top 5 finish of his career. So good job by him. Kyle Busch comes home in 6th, still without a win, still without a stage win. He has 0 playoff points right now, which is just absolutely insane considering that this is the guy who's the defending champion. How about Michael McDowell in 7th? I think this is his 2nd top 10 finish of the year. I mean, he's doing that 34 car proud today. One thing I will say is that Front Row Motorsports, they've been doing themselves proud this year. I mean, John Hunter Nemechek, he's logged a couple of top 10s as well as some decent runs. Michael McDowell's starting to do that too. Tyler Reddick with the top 10, Bubba Wallace with a top 10, and Joey Logano basically fell back to not be seen for a long ass time after he led the first 14 laps. But they'd recover to finish in the 10th position. So, point standings with 10 races remaining until the playoff. Yes, we're into that final 10 race stretch before the playoffs begin. Harvick has pulled away to an 85 point advantage over Chase Elliott, so it's looking like he's going to lock up the regular season title, which comes with it 15 playoff points. Let's be honest here. I mean, when you look at Kevin Harvick's statistics, 4 wins, 9 top 5s, 13 top 10s, leads all drivers in all those categories, 640 laps led. I mean, there's no question. Harvick is the favorite for the championship this year. I think the only guy who can compete with him is Denny Hamlin. And those two have been trading back and forth the last couple weeks. And Hamlin would have won this race if it not worth that for that flat tire. Chase Elliott is 2nd, but is 85 points out. Brad Keselowski moves up to 3rd. He actually has 11 top 10 finishes. Ryan Blaney, despite his troubles, is 4th in the championship. Denny Hamlin, that was actually only his first DNF of the year. Joey Logano in 6th. Martin Truex Jr., despite the fact that he only has 2 top 5 finishes, is still 7th on the points, and he does have the 1 win. Alex Bowman only has 5 top 10s, but is 8th in the championship. And it's kind of working out kind of interesting because the top 8 drivers right now are the only ones that have won a race so far. So that makes things a little bit easier when determining who else is going to get into the playoff, which right now, the top driver who has not won a race yet is Eric Almirola. And if that 10 team continues doing what they're doing, they're going to win a race or two before the end of the season, because they've had 5 consecutive top 5 finishes. They've been close to victory. I mean, they probably would have won the first Pocono race if they would have taken 2 tires, but you know, that's just me. But yeah, that 10 team has really come alive the last couple weeks. Kyle Busch, he's 10th in the point standings, but he has not looked anywhere near his form from last year. His brother Kurt is in 11th. Matt DiBenedetto is in 12th. Clint Boyer in 13th. William Byron in 14th. Jimmy Johnson, who of course is out for probably a race or two, is 15th, so he'll probably have to rely on a win to get into the playoff. And Austin Dillon currently holds down the 16th and final spot. And then on the outside looking in, you have Tyler Reddick, or Eric Jones in 17th, and then you have Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. As for my final rating for the Big Machine Hand Sanitizer 400, like I said, this was not a terrible race. It was not a good one either. I would put it right in the middle somewhere. I probably would have given it like an average to a slightly above average race. But having 0 pure lead changes for the 2nd week in a row, and for the 2nd straight year in this race, that's just unacceptable to me. You know, you have to be able to pass the leader. You know, and we just haven't seen it the last couple races. So that definitely brings the rating down a little bit. But overall, I'm going to give this race a 4.5 out of 10. like I said, it was not good, but it wasn't complete and total trash. I mean, let's be honest here. The end of that first stage was actually pretty cool. You know, there was a lot of great racing in there at the end of that stage. And you had a 3-car battle between Hamlin, Harvick, and Kenseth near the end of the race. You know, seeing, okay, who's going to make it to the end and who's going to win this race. The tire failures, I mean, there's some NASCAR tubers saying, well, it gives us something to talk about. Yeah, but the problem is, it's giving us something to talk about for all the wrong reasons. And like I said, Goodyear released a statement about it, which I'm going to be getting into in the news of the week next week, and I will be ripping Goodyear a new one. I will say that, but I'll save that for next week. But that's going to do it for today's edition of The Fuel. I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm tired. And let's move on to next week, which is Kentucky. Yay. But thank you very much for watching. And until next time, this is the Packerman signing out. See you later.
You better like and subscribe or face the consequences. You have been warned.